it's Kasey. I'm in a not my normal spot for Kasey Talks Critters today. I am home at my home office. Today I am joined by Lori. She is an amazing, amazing snake behaviorist and trainer, and I can't wait to get into asking her all sorts of cool questions about carpet pythons today. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I have one with me. One of my inland carpet pythons chose to come out when I opened his door, so he's with me.
That's wonderful. So I guess let's get right started. So why don't we, I'm going to ask you some questions about you, Lori. So what is your experience with animals?
I'm an animal trainer and behaviorist, and I started as an animal trainer. And actually, when I was very, very young, I started as a veterinary assistant and pet sitter, and then I got into animal training. And over the years, which is a lot of years, over 30 years now, I just kept adding credentials to my animal training resume. And then about 5 years ago, I started specifically studying behavior science. And since I've incorporated behavior science into my animal training, it's just been amazing the things I'm able to accomplish and the level of communication I can reach with the animals, just having that extra level of knowledge.
That is amazing. Like that is goals right there. You have developed this wonderful career over so many years. That is definitely something that I think a lot of people will aspire to do. That is amazing. So in your position now, how did you get there specifically? Like, what kind of training or schooling did you do to get to where you are?
To be a certified professional animal trainer, there are different routes to go. You can apprentice with somebody and learn that way, and that's how I started out. And then I took a test through the Certification Council for Professional Dog Trainers and got certified through them. And then I had to take a test to be accepted into the Fear-Free Professionals program through Fear-Free Pets to be a trainer with them, and that's general animal training. So first I had to take an entry test, and then I had to take their course and pass that. But there are other organizations that certify animal trainers. But in addition to that, if you're interested in working across species, with many species of animals like I do, the Association of Zoos and Aquariums has an animal training applications for zoos and aquariums course that's 50 hours long, and you can go to that. I went to that at the Denver Zoo, which isn't too far from me. And so you can get your animal training credentials either through apprenticeship and working with another trainer until you're ready to train on your own, and then taking a test with a certification organization, or you can actually go through someone's certification program, like Karen Pryor Academy. They will train you in their program and then certify you, or Victoria Stilwell Academy, or things like that. And then, of course, the AZA has their training. So it depends on what type of program works better for you.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. I wasn't exactly sure how it happened, and that is really great. And the AZA is, for our fans who don't know, they accredit zoos and aquariums to meet specific standards, and one way to help animals, or in my little world, I like to only support AZA accredited establishments. That way I know that the animals are getting the top-notch care that they can get.
And then on the behavior science side, that's typically a degree or a certificate program. So I earned a certificate in applied animal behavior through the University of Washington, and now I'm moving on to a bachelor's in animal behavior, and then I plan to move on to a master's in applied animal behavior. So that's sort of a more academic route. Wow. To be an animal trainer, you don't have to have a degree. You just have to either have experience working with another trainer or a certification.
Gotcha. That's really fascinating, and I love that there are so many levels that you can get so involved with the education. So that's amazing. So I think we should start talking about carpet pythons.
I love carpet pythons. They are my favorite snake, the carpet python complex, I should say, and that's the Morelia genus. And it encompasses Morelia spilota, which are the carpet pythons, Morelia bredli, which are the Bredl's pythons, Morelia carinata, which are the rough-scale pythons, and then the Morelia viridis and azurias, and those are the green tree pythons.
Yes. Oh, beautiful, beautiful snakes. So why do you think the carpet python is so cool?
I love them because they're interactive and they're visible a lot. And I understand that some snakes are very cryptic. They like to hide, and that's their nature. And we shouldn't be forcing them to do something that's against their nature. And so if you want a snake that's going to be visible and that you can see, I like the carpet pythons because, like, these guys were sleeping earlier, but they were visible. They were sleeping on ledges and out in the open. And so even during their natural time when they would be asleep, you can still see them most of the time. They don't hide that often. I also like that they climb. I love to watch snakes climb. And some of them swim. I have a coastal carpet python and a Brettles python that I actually put water features in their enclosures because they showed me that they like to swim. So I just feel like there's a lot of variability in behavior with these guys. They're very interactive. And when I say interactive, I don't necessarily mean handling, because there are lots of ways to interact with your snakes where you're not physically touching them. Some of them are not really amenable to being touched. And that's just innate, because in nature, if another animal's touching them, they're usually getting eaten. So it's not normal for them to allow us to touch them. And I feel very privileged that this guy chose to come out of his enclosure when I opened the door a little while ago, and that he's being so gracious and letting me handle him while we're doing this video. If he had chosen not to come out, I would not have forced him out, and it would have just been me in the video.
Yeah, no, and that's absolutely fine. I love that. I think that is fantastic, and I do wish that I have spent more time, and I'm going to definitely spend more time with my animals to get them to that point too, so that it's on their own, that I'm not forcing them out of their enclosures. I need to be much better about that.
It's a very rewarding experience. Definitely. When they choose to come out and interact with you, but it's also just as rewarding to watch their natural behaviors. Even if they aren't amenable to touch, there's plenty of things that I do with mine. He's gonna climb through my smock now. That I do with mine, that I'm interacting with them, but I'm not physically touching them, like target training and setting up different types of exercises for them.
Ball python people, don't come at me, but I feel like the carpet python is a cooler python. They get a little bit bigger, they're more interactive. So do you think they might have a more prominent place coming up more in the future with the reptile industry kind of expanding? Do you think carpet pythons might become more popular?
I don't understand why some of the subspecies aren't more popular. And I will say that I have all of the subspecies legal to own in the United States, which are the inland carpet pythons, jungle carpets, coastal carpets, Darwin carpets, and the West Papuan carpets. I don't think I forgot one. There is a Morelia imbricata, which is not in the pet trade in the United States, and Australia does not export animals any longer, so we can't get that subspecies here. And I will also say the subspecies may be changing in the near future, because there's just been a whole lot of phylogenetic research done, and there's some new literature that's going to come out in the next few months. But the subspecies do tend to demonstrate different behaviors. So the inland carpet pythons, I think, make excellent family members, excellent pets. He's actually a great educational animal. And I've worked with 4 of them. I have 3 right now. One of them unfortunately passed away recently of cancer. But they're calm, and they're very, very intelligent. These inland carpet pythons do some of the most advanced behaviors that I've trained in a snake. And so I think they have a lot of potential to be excellent pets. And like I said, they're visible. They do tend to be more active in the evenings and at night, but they're still visible during the day. When they're sleeping, they usually sleep on ledges or they're out in the open. And so I think there's a lot of potential for this subspecies in particular as a pet. And then I'm not saying the other subspecies don't make good pets. They absolutely can, depending on how they're raised, the temperament of the parents, and how you handle them from hatchlings. Because part of their behavior is genetic, and then part of it is going to be from learning and experience and how they were raised up to begin with. So my jungle carpet python, for example, is beautiful, and she does training well, but she doesn't like to be touched. It's something that over her life we'll work on. But if you want a snake you can handle, There are certain carpet subspecies that I would guide people towards versus others because I've observed they tend to be more amenable to that, like the inland carpet pythons. They stay a nice size. The inlands typically stay around 5 feet. Some of the other subspecies, and I want to just be upfront about like that, can get larger, like 7 to 8 feet. So you have to do your research.
The jungles can get there, right?
On what subspecies that you're getting, or if you get another species within the Morelia complex, like Brettles pythons can get 6 to 8 feet. Coastal carpet pythons tend to be the 6 to 8 feet range. But the Darwins, the West Papuan carpet pythons, the inland stay a little bit smaller, like 5 feet-ish.
Yeah, well, that's good. So do you find that, maybe we'll stick with the inlands, do you think that they are tricky to establish into a new home, or what kind of methods have you found useful to get a snake established into a new home?
The very best thing possible would be if the breeder prepped the snake for the new home before it left their facility. So if the breeder knows this snake is going to a family to be a pet, or going to an educational program to be an education animal, if they could do things from the time it hatches to prepare it to cope with those circumstances, that is ideal. That is absolutely ideal. Unfortunately, most breeders keep the snakes in racks, and they have water, maybe substrate, maybe a hide, and so they're not getting a lot of environmental stimulation, and they're not getting exposed to things that they're going to encounter in a home or an education program or a zoo or things like that. So when you get the snake, I actually recommend keeping them as identical to how the breeder kept them as possible when it first gets there, because any change is stressful. Whether that change is for the better or worse, it doesn't matter. Change is stressful. So if the snake, if you get a hatchling and it's been kept in a 6-quart tub, which is pretty typical, I recommend setting up a 6-quart tub just like the breeder had it, and then putting that inside of your habitat. And I just cut a hole in the top, and then the snake is free to come out when they feel comfortable, when they feel confident, and explore the habitat at large. But they wouldn't have to leave their tub, because I leave water and all the resources in there, if they're too afraid and they're not ready yet. That's worked extremely well for me, and honestly, the carpet pythons usually are out within 12 to 48 hours. Other species sometimes
That's a very good tip. I
rely on that tub for longer before they build up the confidence to come out. But that way they're having a gradual transition, and you're not suddenly thrusting them into a situation they can't cope with because it's totally alien.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So do you think there's a particular owner that would be better suited for carpet pythons?
It depends on, when I'm working with people to pick out a new snake, I have them make a list of their expectations. And I ask them, what does life with your snake look like in your ideal world, in your mind, in your imaginary perfect mind? What do your interactions with your snake look like? What does life look like? What are your expectations of this animal? And I try to match them with a species that's more likely to be suitable. And sometimes it's not always the one they think they want. I had a client that wanted a specific species because of how it looked, and her list of criteria didn't match up at all. Like, there was no overlapping there between that species and what she expected of it. And so we were able to find a different species for her that she was happy with how it looked, and she's happy with its behavior, and it's working out extremely well. So carpet pythons are active, visible, really smart. They do well with the training that I do and the behavior activities. I'm able to let them roam. They're not flighty. For the most part, there's always going to be exceptions and outliers, but for the most part. However, they aren't a snake that's just going to sit and hang out with you and watch TV, or hang out with you in your lap while you read a book. Like, you saw that he was moving the whole time, and when I gave him the opportunity, he climbed on one of his activity stations. That's pretty typical of carpet pythons. And so if you're looking for a snake that's just going to sit there, that's maybe not the species for you if you're planning to handle it a ton. But if you want to interact with it a ton in other ways and have an active animal, they're very active. They're often roaming around while I'm working in the office, and I just love watching them move and climb and do the things they do. I don't need to hold them.
That's awesome. I love that. So, because this is a Zen show, does Zen Habitats make an enclosure that is appropriate for carpet pythons?
Yes, they do. We have different enclosures here. So you will see some facilities that every enclosure is identical, and they're all set up identical, and that's for the aesthetically pleasing, to be aesthetically pleasing for the person. I do the opposite. I try to assess what I think is best for the individual snake. And so I have a hodgepodge of different enclosures here. 11 of them are Zen habitats. And the reason I've chosen those for some of the snakes is they're very roomy inside. Like the dimensions that the 4x2x2, that's actually the inside dimensions of the habitat. There's very little that's taken up by other stuff. Where you have some enclosures that the space for the light like sinks down into the enclosure, or the exterior dimensions are even just slightly smaller than 4x2x2, which means the interior dimensions are smaller. I like the roominess of the Zen. I like how light they are because I can move them around myself. And I like that if the snake outgrows the 4-foot length, that I can attach that to another one and create a larger enclosure. So for a snake that you're maybe not sure, well, are they going to stay around 4 or 5 feet, or are they going to get 6 or 7 feet? It's a great option because if they hit that higher range, then I can buy a second enclosure and I can attach it. Like I have 2 super dwarf reticulated pythons, and I'm not sure how large. One is 4.5 feet right now, and he's 3 years old. He's in a 4x2x4. But I fully intend as he gets older and they're slow to grow that I'm probably going to attach a second one to that. And I like having that option. I really do. The other thing I like about the cubes, the 2x2x2 cubes, is that they're sealed up. And if you don't use the grommet for the cords, like even a tiny corn snake baby or a tiny carpet python baby is not going to get out of it. And it's pretty roomy for a hatchling. So like my rough scale python grew up in one and he's still in it now. They're pretty thin long snakes and he's still using his, but I could also attach that to a 4x2x2 and when he gets bigger. So I just like the options that they have.
Oh, good. That's something that we really strive for, so I'm so happy to hear firsthand that's part of it. That makes me so happy. Good. So I think I'm going to get into questions from our fans. So they kind of want to know a little bit more about where is the best place, where do you find a good breeder for carpet pythons?
Well, okay, so with the carpet python specifically, there are some really highly educated people in the field. And there's a book called The Complete Carpet Python. It came out in 2011. That was my introduction to carpet pythons was actually when I took herpetology, and I was in charge of the carpet pythons in the herpetology lab, and I fell in love with them. And I read that book, The Complete Carpet Python, in one night. But it's written it's written in combination by a breeder, by a PhD professor, and then by someone who works with snakes on their phylogeny and their taxonomy. And that is being updated. That's one of the resources that I said it may change a few things because 2011, that's pretty long ago in regard to scientific information. Yeah. And so the authors have written the more complete carpet python. And these are more like the combination of a textbook and a care guide, but more on the textbookish side, but they're very accessible to most readers. And so they go over husbandry in that, care, breeding, and where the snakes come from in their natural history and their taxonomy. And I can't wait until the new version comes out. And I expect there'll be some scientific publications come out after that in relation to the research done for the book. So I recommend that if you know someone has spent the time and effort to publish a paper or publish an article or write a book, and they also breed that species, that's who I would try to get one from. So, for example, all of my inland carpet pythons came from Dr. Justin Julander, who's one of the authors of that book. And he also wrote the Complete Children's Python and a book about green tree pythons, and he's written some other books. So my inlands came directly from him. So if you know that there are experts like that, I recommend that you try to get animals from them. A lot of my Morelia Bradley came from one of the other authors of that book. So if that's not the case, then I start looking on Morph market, asking in groups that are specific to that species, so like a carpet python group, and asking other people's opinions and experiences and what they've had with breeders. I look at the reviews on Morph Market. I just try to research that breeder before I even contact them. And then if I think, okay, I'm going to contact this breeder, I have a whole list of questions that I ask, and it's probably a bigger list than most people because I ask about behavior and temperament. And I also ask about the behavior and temperament of the parents and the health of the parents. Are the parents still alive? If not, at what age did they die? What did they die from? I want a healthy animal that has a good temperament, especially for what I do here. And so I will ask how they're raised as well, and if they were exposed to any environmental stimulation, any handling, what they can tell me about each individual snake's temperament and personality. And if they give you a deer in the headlights look when you start asking those questions, I usually find somebody who maybe isn't specifically assessing those things or specifically giving them environmental stimulation or enrichment, but that can answer my questions like just in a informal way and say, oh, I happen to notice that one whenever I'm cleaning. It always comes out of the tub and it will climb around the rack, or it'll come towards me, or it'll climb around the room. Well, that is significant versus one that when you're cleaning hides.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think those are very good tips. Now, I have a question about diets, and this kind of goes into more enrichment. Do you provide more than just rodents to your snakes? I'd love to hear more about the options that you feed your snakes.
So carpet pythons in situ in the wild will eat pretty much whatever they can find, because sometimes Australia's environments can be harsh. Now, the ones that tend to flock towards cities and stuff, of course, they're going to have access probably to more rodents than anything else, because we lovely humans attract rodents with all of our activities. Yes. The ones that are living more out in the wild, away from human settlements, are going to eat whatever they can find. So yeah, they'll eat small mammals, they'll eat birds, they'll eat other reptiles, they'll eat amphibians. And so I try to vary the diet with mine. And these inland carpet pythons, like the one you just saw, he will eat rodents, which is rats and mice. He'll eat gerbils. He'll eat quail and chicks and reptilinks. And, you know, I'm sure he would eat more stuff if I bought him more stuff. I haven't tried fish. I have some other snakes that will eat fish as well, but I haven't actually, I don't think I've offered the inlands fish. But he's a good feeder, and he's eaten whatever I've offered him.
Well, that is definitely a contrast to some of the ball pythons, for sure, who are so picky.
I do work with royals, and I wanted to study their behavior because they are the most popular pet snake in the entire world, which is kind of incredible to me because they don't have a lot of qualities that make them really well suited as the best family pet. I mean, I love them. I like the snakes, but if it was my only pet, like there's no way it would give me the satisfaction the carpet pythons do. But I do have some that will eat mice, rats, and quail, and I have two that have taken reptilinks. But yeah, you're right. That's not very common. Pretty much I know if I offer one of my Brettles pythons some kind of food, they're going to eat it no matter what it is. That's really not the case with every species.
Good eaters. Yeah, good eaters are my favorites. All right, so I think we went over some really fascinating stuff about the carpet pythons. I want to ask you some questions about you. So these are more like just funsy bonus round questions.
I hope I can answer these.
Yeah, no, these ones, take your time. It's all right. No pressure. So what advice would you give someone wanting to pursue a career similar to yours?
Definitely get an early start with your animal education. And if you can get into an animal field early on, you're going to get further younger in life than I did. I've done this animal career my whole life, but for a long time, it was a part-time career, and I had a full-time career working for the city of Colorado Springs. So I was working 40 hours a week for the Colorado Springs Police Department, while at the same time working 20 hours a week doing animal training, veterinary assisting, teaching horseback riding, and you know, building my animal training credentials. So I was a busy person, but my heart was with the animals, even though I had this other job because I wanted a retirement, I wanted benefits, I needed to pay for the animals. if you can have the best of both worlds and get into a career early on that's what you love, I would recommend that. But I don't regret, like, I love what I'm doing now. I'm doing animals full time and I'm just as happy as can be. But I would say get your education, whether that's an apprenticeship with a trainer or behaviorist, get your certifications, or go to a school to obtain those, or get a degree that is somewhat training and behavior related. There aren't a lot of specific animal behavior degrees. There's only a handful of universities that offer them, but something related, even like zoo science or zoology or biology or human behavior science or psychology, then you can apply that to animals with your certifications that you get to add on that are just specifically animal certifications.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's fantastic advice. Is there a common myth about your profession or the field that you want to debunk?
Yes. Animal training is a science, and applied animal behavior is a science. So these are sciences. And I think that people don't equate animal training and behavior, and sometimes even psychology, as science fields, but they are. So I guess that's the biggest thing that I want to impart, is that I'm doing more science now than ever. I'm reading scientific journals, I'm reading published literature, I'm reading books, I'm going to classes. And so it's called behavior science because there is a science of behavior, and that science doesn't change depending on what species you're working with. So behavior is behavior, whether it's us or a carpet python or a dog or a horse or a frog. Of course, the way that you work with each animal is going to depend on their own natural history and biology, but the behavior science doesn't change, and the laws of learning don't change across species. Learning science is learning science, and it is pretty well established at this point.
Yeah. Oh, that was beautifully said. Thank you so much. I love that. Okay. I have a couple more. So what is the biggest challenge you're facing in your role or in your project or in your position right now, and how are you tackling it?
It's going to have to be financial. So animals are not cheap to keep. And in addition, actually the snakes are probably the least expensive animal that I actually feed here. I work at an animal sanctuary and we have horses, dogs, cats. We've had all kinds of species: llamas, rabbits, rodents, chickens, birds, pigs, you name it, it's been here. And so animals are expensive, and people want to get rid of animals, give you animals, sell you animals, and then you have to be able to pay for their food, their veterinary care, their habitats. You want to give them optimal well-being while they're in your care. And so the animal itself really isn't always the major expense, it's the care. And that's my major pitfall right now. There's so much more that I know I could do with my work, but I don't have the money. And I have lots of people that would like to intern and volunteer and come see the animals, but I live in this space where the animals are, so I don't want a bunch of strangers in the same space that I live in. It's much different for the horses because they have their own building and pastures, and people can come and visit and interact with them without coming into my living space. So it's always like wishing you had an educational building that the public could come to and engage with you and see the animals where they're not coming into your home. I do accept interns one at a time from Pikes Peak State College, and they get a criminal background check, they get vetted, the school's responsible for them, and so then they do come in and help me with the reptiles.
Oh, well, that's good. That's really good. I understand. I've worked nonprofit for a number of years myself. It is difficult. Funding is always difficult. Grant writing is so much fun. Okay, so if you were to go back and give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
To push for some type of animal or behavior-related degree in the beginning, instead of sort of getting sidetracked with the whole police thing. I mean, I think that if you know you have a passion early on, I mean, I've had this passion for animals my whole life, and I wish I had gone to school for it before now. I mean, I have an Associate of Applied Science in Zookeeping that I got while I was working for the city, but I wish I would have done all that initially and just gotten right into the animal career earlier. But maybe I wouldn't appreciate it as much if I did. I appreciate it so much now, and I'm so happy now. Maybe I wouldn't have that feeling if I'd been doing it for 30 years full time instead of part time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that kind of rings back to, giving advice to our younger fans, starting early. If you know you want to work with animals, get into it early.
I mean, and it isn't going to pay a lot. It's not going to be like, oh, I get my degree in animal science or zoology or psychology, and I want to work with animals. And I mean, you're going to have to struggle to get a foothold in that culture and in that industry and start making money. I mean, I don't make as much money doing this as I did for the police department, but I'm building it. And so it's sort of a thing where no one's just going to pay you this specific salary up front. You're going to have to build that income over time as you build your experience and credentials and get more clients and such.
Yeah. I do think that times are changing too. There are a lot more pet-focused people and pet-focused products, pet-focused just industry that is creating a lot more careers and a lot more jobs.
And that's a great point.
So.
If you want to work with animals, get your foot in the door, and it doesn't matter what it is with animals. If you're cleaning kennels, if you're working at a veterinary hospital, if you're working at a zoo, even if that's not your goal, get your foot in the door and get some experience with animals of some kind. Even if it's not the species,
just get your hands on
that
something
you want to work with. If you just get in the animal field somehow, lots of things cross over, and it will build into other things.
Absolutely. All right, I have one last question. It is, what is one question that you wish I would have asked that I didn't ask, and how would you answer?
Oh my goodness, I don't know. You didn't ask how many snakes I have.
I didn't. How many snakes do you have?
113. All in habitats. I don't have racks. I have some large tubs that I've put windows in and converted into habitats, but they're all in habitats.
Wow.
They all get varied diets if they'll accept them. They all get time out of their enclosure if they want it. They don't all want to come out. And they all get individualized care based on who they are as an individual and as a species. And I love it. But yes, my whole house looks just like this. We might have one room that doesn't have enclosures in it.
I mean, that's okay. Just don't tell my husband that that's how my house is going to look pretty soon.
My husband, we have a relationship where we try not to interfere with what the other one wants to do if it's a passion of theirs, and he's living in this house too, and he's not really a snake person. He doesn't mind the snakes. He's not afraid of them or anything, and he'll sometimes help me film, or he'll pick one up and hold one and if I need him to, but he wouldn't probably have snakes if he wasn't married to me.
Too funny. Oh, well, thank you so much, Lori. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Sorry I sounded like a chipmunk the whole time, but thank you so much. And I'm going to do my little Zen plug. So if you like this video, make sure to like it, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified each month when we do a new episode. We'll have more guests like Lori on. Again, thank you, Lori. Really appreciate having you on today.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.